Okay, so thank you very much, Karen. And so we'll move on to the last talk before the break. This is from Marie-Hélène Verlaque from the Collège de France. And she will be talking about modulation of gene expression by an actin-dependent pressure gradient in mouse oocytes.
Okay, so thank you, Thomas. It's a really great pleasure to be here today. And so I would like to apologize because I'm going to present mostly unpublished work today. And so it's not finished. And so I would like to highlight the fact that in many types of oocytes, the location of the nucleus inside the cell can potentially act like a morphogen, providing temporal and spatial information to the cell. This is the case, for example, in the Drosophila oocyte, where the location of the nucleus at the dorsal side of the oocyte will predefine the dorsal ventral axis of the embryo and then of the adult body plan. In mouse and human, at the end of oocyte growth, the nucleus that I have highlighted here in this dotted circle is actually located in the center of this cell, and the cell is non-polarized. And so the positioning of the nucleus does not convey any spatial information to the embryo axis nor to the adult body plan. Yet we know that oocytes which don't end up their growth phase with the central nucleus, they fail to succeed in the rest of their development. And for example, they fail to succeed in undergoing extremely asymmetric division in terms of size later on. So this is typically what we observed in oocyte coming from the formin-2 knockout strain. So formin-2 is a nucleator for straight actin filaments. And if we look at the position of the nucleus in this oocyte, it's not central, it is off-center. And this oocyte will fail to develop normally like heterozygous control. So just to remind you that in this oocyte, the nucleus is very big. It is 30 micron wide, so it's the size of a somatic cell. And at that stage that we are looking at, the chromatin has a very peculiar organization. It is condensed. You see here that the nucleolus is surrounded by DNA. So you can appreciate that in formin-2 knockout oocytes, so which don't have this essential nucleator, you cannot detect actin filament in the cytoplasm, unlike in the control, and you cannot see filaments that surround the nuclear envelope, like in the control. If you re-express back formin-2 into a formin-2 knockout oocyte, you will observe that the nucleus will be centralized, so you can rescue the default in nucleus positioning. So for the sake of time, and because this has been published, I just would like to highlight the fact that we have shown that when you re-express formin-2, you reform the cytoplasmic mesh, and actually we are proposing that this cytoplasmic mesh of actin filaments, which are organized from vesicles, because the nucleator is hooked to vesicles, we are proposing that they exert a gradient of pressure that is non-specific and that can potentially center any large organelle. Indeed, if you inject an oil droplet that is more or less the size of the nucleus, so this is the oil droplet here, that also has a density that is twice the density of water so that it doesn't float into the cytoplasm, this oil droplet will be centered like the nucleus and will actually have an instant speed that is comparable to the speed of the nucleus when it is centralized. So we believe that this pressure gradient is completely non-specific. But of course, the question which puzzled us after we had observed this phenomenon is that we are looking at a property of the cytoplasm that allows to center the nucleus. But in my lab, we have studied just the opposite motion, that is the off-centering of chromosome later on, so after this step, so few hours after these steps. And so we wondered why put the chromosome in the center of these large cells, where later on the cell will just do the opposite, that is off-center its spindle and its chromosome in order to mediate an asymmetric division in terms of size. And this is very important for these cells to preserve the maternal stores that were accumulated during oogenesis. So the work I'm going to present is unpublished, and it's the work of three very talented researchers, Maria Almonacid, Adèle Aljord, and Gaëlle Le Thor. And so this is really their work. And so we were wondering why put the nucleus to the center, to off-center the chromosome later on. And what Maria observed is that actually, if you look at the shape of nuclei, they seem to be different if you compare a control formin 2 het with a formin 2 knockout nucleus. So in the control, if you stain for lamine, you see that the lamines are deformed all over the nuclear outline, while in a formin 2 knockout, the lamines, they seem to be smooth on most of the nuclear outline, and the nuclei present a major invagination. So we didn't know how to quantify these differences in terms of shape of nuclei. So we collaborated with a group of Auguste Genovesio at the École Normale Supérieure. He is a computational biologist. And what Auguste and Ali did was to reconstruct these stacks of nuclei in 3D and extract automatically different morphological features. Remove the correlated morphological features in order to perform principal component analysis or linear determinant analysis to be able to address the similarities or differences between several types of nuclei. So I'm not going to show you the 46 non-redundant features, but I can highlight two features that are significantly different between the organization of nuclei in controls versus formin 2 knockout oocytes. So for example, if you measure the distance between the centroid of the DNA and the outer DNA surface, you see that it is increased in formin 2 knockouts. If you also measure the percentage of contact between lamine A and DNA, you see, which is highlighted on this cartoon, you see that it is increased in the formin 2 knockout oocyte. And so, because we could measure differences in this organization, and in particular because we could observe an increased contact between DNA and lamine, and we know that in some cell types, the contact between lamine and DNA can potentially influence gene expression, we decided to perform an RNA sequences of these two types of oocytes, taken, of course, at the same stage, so oocyte with off-center nuclei, or oocyte with central nuclei. And we observed that we had about 200 genes that were misregulated between these two kinds of oocytes, with most genes that were actually downregulated. So also for the sake of time, I'm not going to present you all the data that we did to validate this RNA-seq approach, but basically, to sum them up, we could show that some genes are indeed dependent on the expression of formin 2. We show that basically by performing a rescue experiment, adding formin 2 or different version of formin 2 into this nuclei, restore nucleus position, restore nucleus organization, and restore gene expression. So then we wondered how formin 2 could modulate the expression of these genes. So we could exclude the contribution of nuclear actin using different probes for nuclear actin and showing that the level of this probe are not significantly different between the two types of oocytes. But then we turned into the idea that maybe formin 2, because it allows the organization of a dynamic actin mesh into the cytoplasm, that maybe this dynamic mesh that is able in a formin 2 knockout oocyte, when we re-inject and we re-express formin 2, to put the nucleus back into the center in about 5 hours, maybe this mesh is also acting on the nucleus and producing forces at steady state. So this is what we are observing here. For example, if we look in a control oocyte, so this is the nucleus that is expressing this nucleoplasmic probe. So all this green thing is the nucleus. Here is the nucleolus that is not stained with this probe. So this probe doesn't enter the nucleolus. And you can appreciate that in a control oocyte, the nucleus is subjected to a lot of fluctuation. So the nuclear envelope is subjected to a lot of fluctuation. While in a formin-2 knockout, you see far less fluctuation of the nucleus. You also see that we observed in live the same kind of nucleus shape that we observed in fixed oocytes. That is this globally smooth shape with a major invagination. And you can appreciate that if we treat this formin-2 knockout oocyte with cytochalasin D, a drug that depolymerizes actin, we also observe this strange shape, but we also see that the nuclear envelope is fluctuating far less when we look at a very high temporal resolution. So we measured the fluctuation of the nuclear envelope by scanning the nuclear outline with a rotating angle and measuring the variance of the radius. And so, for example, for this nucleus here in the control, you see that the mean shape is more or less circular, with variation fluctuation of the nuclear envelope distributed all over the circumference of the nuclear envelope. While, for example, on this nucleus in a formin-2 knockout, you see that the shape is no longer circular, and that most of it, actually 2/3 of the circumference, is more cold and does not present fluctuation. So we can do that on one nuclei, but we can do that on many oocytes, and we can measure the mean fluctuation of the variance of the radius over time and theta. And you can appreciate that the mean fluctuations are significantly higher in the control oocyte compared to the formin-2 knockout, suggesting that formin-2 promotes nuclear envelope fluctuation. And we think it does so because it allows the polymerization of actin filament, because if we treat a control oocyte with cytochalasin D, then we completely abolish nuclear envelope fluctuation to a level that is not significantly different than formin-2 knockout. So we think the cytoplasmic filaments, they promote nuclear envelope fluctuation, and we believe that these forces are transmitted to chromatin, because if we now look in these different categories of oocytes at the motion of chromatin, we see that chromatin that is labeled here, and you see mostly the nucleolus actually, you see that chromatin is moving a lot in the control, while it's moving far less in a formin-2 knockout or in a control treated with cytochalasin D. We can quantify the motion of chromatin. So for example, for this oocyte or this nucleus, on a time projection, you can appreciate that chromatin is moving because you have different colors, while in a formin-2 knockout oocyte, you see that the chromatin is not really moving because the color mix and you have white color mostly. But you can also do that on different oocytes and follow and track the centroid of the nucleolus in different oocytes. And you see in green, all these tracks are from control, compared to the track from a formin-2 knockout oocyte. You see that these tracks are much longer compared to the formin-2 knockouts, suggesting that chromatin explores much more space in control than when you don't have formin-2. And this is the mean square displacement of the nucleolus centroid, and you see that the curve of the mean square displacement is above, so the green curve is above the curve present in the formin-2 knockout. So the chromatin is experiencing more motion and is moving more in the presence of formin-2 compared to when you don't have formin-2. So we would like to propose that these filaments, they exert forces at steady state, so in a control oocyte that has a central nucleus, that are impacting the nuclear envelope, making it fluctuate, and that these fluctuations are somehow transmitted to chromatin, and that this allows the modulation of gene expression. So we were wondering how these local forces could actually modulate gene expression. So I told you that when we did the RNA-seq between formin-2 knockout versus formin-2 heads, we observed about 200 genes that are deregulated. So here we are looking at the differential gene expression. So we performed a finer analysis, which is actually to look at the exon usage. So it's another type of analysis of our RNA-seq data. So instead of comparing the total mRNA level, now we are more looking at how exons are being used, so more at messenger RNA processing. And when we perform this analysis on the same set of data, we observe that actually we had a much important impact because we had about, you see, 1,000 exons that were overrepresented and 600 that were underrepresented. And this is concerning 3,600 transcripts, so a lot of transcripts. So a massive effect. We decided to look at the gene ontology of these two types of analysis. So either the DSEQ analysis or the DEXSEQ analysis. And when we performed the gene ontology, we were quite surprised to see that some components, such as the chromatoid body or the XY body, for example, were picked up with very high significance, but also extremely important enrichment, more than 20-fold here in this case for the chromatoid body. We also observed enrichment in histone locus body, about 15-fold, interchromatin granule, XY body, chiral bodies, and all these structures are actually nuclear bodies. What are nuclear bodies? So nuclear bodies are membraneless organelles that are inside the nucleus, and they are essential accelerators of transcription and RNA splicing. So these membraneless organelles are formed of condensate between protein and RNA. And in the nucleus, you have many types of membraneless organelles. For example, the nucleoli are membraneless organelles involved in ribosomal RNA processing. But you have chiral bodies that are involved in the processing of small nuclear RNPs, essential for splicing. The histone gene, the histone locus bodies is involved in the specific transcription of histone gene. You have splicing speckles involved in splicing, and you have also paraspeckles involved in long non-coding RNA retention. So this membraneless organelle, as I said, they are accelerators of RNA processing. They can undergo condensation, so this protein and RNA can interact together and be in an equilibrium between a soluble phase and a liquid phase and form condensate, so they can be either soluble or condensed. And they are essential for embryogenesis, yet we have not much information concerning their organization in the model that we are studying. So because we picked these nuclear bodies in our gene ontology, we thought, well, maybe we should look at them in our formin-2 knockouts compared to our controls. So we have not looked yet at all, and this is why I'm apologizing because it's unpublished work. We haven't looked at all the nuclear bodies, but we have looked so far at splicing speckles, but also at chiral bodies involved in, as I said, in small nuclear RNA processing. And we observed that actually their organization seems to be different in the control versus the formin-2 knockouts. So, for example, the splicing speckles, they seem to be larger and less numerous than what we observe in the absence of formin-2. And the chiral bodies, they also seem to be larger with a microsphere in the control that we don't observe in the formin-2 knockouts. So we are planning to check all these nuclear bodies, and so far we have started to look at splicing speckles using an appropriate marker. And so, as I mentioned, these organelles can undergo condensation. You see here one such condensation and behave like liquid droplets that can actually fuse together. And when they fuse, then the volume of the corresponding droplet is twice the volume of individual droplets. And so we started to look at the impact of actin filaments on the organization of these splicing speckles. And so this is a control oocyte, and you see these droplets are moving a lot. While when we treat this control with cytochalasin D, you see that these droplets tend to be smaller, less round, and more immobile. And before I present you a bit more data, I just want to highlight the fact that we have a way to actually increase nuclear envelope fluctuation by treating oocytes with nocodazole by removing microtubules. So if we do that, then on these guys, then the nuclear envelope is fluctuating much more in the control. And by the way, we start recovering a more round shape in the formin 2 knockouts, arguing that the microtubule are responsible for this kind of very peculiar shape. So we think that microtubules are actually dampening nuclear envelope fluctuation in our model system, because if we quantified the nuclear envelope fluctuation in the presence of nocodazole, so in the absence of polymerized microtubule, then we have increased amount of nuclear envelope fluctuation. So we can use nocodazole to treat control oocytes, and we can observe then that when we do that, we start having a bigger, larger splicing speckle that move more. So we can play with cytoplasmic forces, so either decrease forces with cytochalasin D, and we obtain smaller and immobile splicing speckle, or increase the forces, and then we get larger and more mobile splicing speckle. So all these experiments are really preliminary. What is interesting is that these treatments are reversible. So if we treat a control with cytochalasin, we completely solubilize the speckles. But then if we wash out the cytochalasin D, then the speckles form again, and they can actually fuse. This is what you observe here. And they will move again. So we would like to propose, and this is really work in progress, and we are making hypotheses that maybe these cytoplasmic-based forces are acting on membraneless organelle either by displacing the equilibrium between the soluble pool of this material towards the condensed pool, or by increasing the probability of encounter between these different objects. If you somehow increase diffusion by having these forces acting on the nucleus. And then if you increase their probability of encounter, then you might increase their fusion. This is what we are trying to test right now. And so we think that local forces from the microfilament, they impact the nuclear envelope, and they impact at least splicing speckles, but maybe also the organization of nuclear bodies. And we know that these nuclear bodies are very important to modulate transcription, but also the splicing, and that's probably why we observe this differential gene expression and also major impact on splicing. So we would like to propose the fact that the nucleus positioning is an important phenomenon, not so much by regulating the position, but maybe more by regulating the organization of nuclear bodies inside the nucleus. And so by regulating the oocyte transcriptome, which is key, I mean, both its quantity and its quality is key to allow the rest of the development, because as you know, transcription is tremendously reduced at this stage, and transcription will resume only after fertilization and zygotic genome activation later on. So with that, I would like to again thank the people who did the work. So Adèle, Maria, and Gaël. So Gaël is doing the simulations. And I would like to thank our collaborators, Raphaël Voiturier in particular, our biophysicist who tries to help us modelize this, but also Alexandra Colin and Zoé Gerwi at the ENS. And also, I would like to really thank the group of Christophe Antoniewski from the IBPS for allowing us to really do interesting bioinformatic analysis. And I thank you for your attention.